EA's approach to trickling out vague news about the next Battlefield title may end up backfiring on them as fans mock their latest investors call over promises of another tremendous live service experience. EA's tone-deaf approach to hyping up their next Battlefield game by repeating the same marketing tactics of its disappointing 2042 release does not instill much confidence in the studio. And revisiting some of the original comments from Vince Zampella about the next Battlefield game, we may be heading down another specialist soldier path once again. Should fans be worried about the next title? Will the no pre-order stance actually make an impact this time around? Let's talk about it. So last week during an EA investors call, Andrew Wilson spent some time talking about Battlefield, both the current Battlefield 2042 and the next game in the franchise. And well, the things he said would honestly be laughable if they weren't so depressing about how just out of touch the CEO is with their own IP. Early on in the call, Wilson said, with each immersive action-packed season of Battlefield 2042, players have made it clear that they want an even deeper experience. And calling 2042 seasons action-packed is honestly some masterful narrative weaving on his part. 2042 has made itself notorious for offering the least amount of content of any recent Battlefield game, with a major component of that being tied to the lackluster seasonal content. He then says, "Our teams have listened to the community, have learned valuable lessons, and are driving to the future." And the language of this is a bit echoey at this point, as apparently the studio has been learning valuable lessons for quite some time, or should I say costly lessons. He then reiterated that there's tons of studios working on the game and it's still the biggest game in the franchise. And while that may be true, they're also sort of glossing over the fact that they also laid off the entire Ridgeline studio that was working on a single player component of the next Battlefield game. And so despite the scale of the team, EA is still hedging their bets against Battlefield in case the next title is not as big a success as they want it to be. Now, towards the end of the call, he says, "I've just spent a whole bunch of time with the collective Battlefield team playing what they're building, and it's going to be another tremendous live service." And whew, honestly, that last one is kind of one of the hardest lines to hear as a Battlefield fan. Anyone who has been around this franchise since at least Battlefield 4 or Battlefield 1 days will know that the franchise started to go downhill when it dropped its premium content for its live service offerings. And hearing Andrew Wilson talk up any Battlefield game at this point honestly carries zero weight, especially after how he hyped up Battlefield 2042 in a similar investors call, saying, "The developers are tracking well ahead of internal milestones, which should bode well for the level of polish of the finished product, something that was definitely subpar on Battlefield 5. And well, we all know how 2042 turned out, and if he hyped up 2042 saying it was basically going to release with a high quality of polish, what does that say about his words regarding the next title? Hell, at this point it seems like your odds might be better betting against whatever Andrew Wilson says. Now, all that said, I do think it is possible for the studio to make a good live service Battlefield game. I don't think live service is what has made the last Battlefield games bad. I think it's EA's approach or DICE's approach to how they implement live service. And their leadership this time around is completely different, with Call of Duty and Apex Legends creator Vince Zampella heading the initiative, plus a new vice president of DICE who is shaking up the management structure at the company. Just maybe things will be different this time around. In fact, I think you can bet on things being different. It's just a matter of whether it's the kind of different you're hoping for. Back in 2021, in an interview with Vince Zampella, he spoke about the next Battlefield title, saying, "In this universe, the world is interconnected with shared characters and narratives." This is pretty much just like Call of Duty, Apex Legends, and frankly tons of other major IPs that are trying to be heavily character driven. But Battlefield has never made that a core component of its multiplayer experience, and with the last title, many players argued that it really felt out of place having these bespoke hero classes in the game, and they wanted more of a return to form. And sure, over the years there's been a few likable characters throughout some of the single player content in Battlefield that just never was forced onto players in the multiplayer experience. That is until 2042. So hearing Vince Zampella talk about this interconnected narrative stuff and hearing that line repeated over and over again when it comes to investors' calls and interviews about the next game, I don't know what to make of that. It seems like characters are going to be at the forefront of the next Battlefield game, whether or not we want them to be. And unfortunately, with projects this big, the wheels are often in motion well before they can pivot or learn from their past failures. The ideas of the next Battlefield game have been locked in for a long time, potentially even before they had enough time to analyze what went wrong with 2042 and make some judgment calls about whether or not heroes should be main components of the multiplayer experience. And if they do try and shoehorn these weird characters into the Battlefield multiplayer once again, it could certainly sour the franchise to a lot of veteran players. Though at this point, I think a lot of the vets are going to be holding off on the next title and waiting to see what the reviewers say, if they haven't already moved on. Most of the people I've played a lot of Battlefield with over the years are now predominantly playing other games, because when Battlefield dropped the ball, well, there was plenty of other titles out there to pick up the slack. Then again, maybe this is just the slow growing process of Battlefield into a more mainstream, less unique title. For years, many of the old school Battlefield fans have been finding themselves in more militaristic milsim style shooters, while Battlefield seems like it's been trying to capture more of the Call of Duty space. That said, this time around, I do think a lot of fans, whether you're an old fan or a new fan, are probably going to hold off on jumping the gun with pre-orders or any sort of early adoptions. It is hard to know though. Fans are fickle. Even 2042's tornado-filled, gimmicky marketing managed to sway a lot of fans who felt burnt from Battlefield 5's problematic live service experience. At this point, all I can say is whatever words come out of Andrew Wilson's mouth regarding the franchise are hollow and meaningless. He said the games have been way ahead of schedule while they were horribly behind schedule and unpolished. He now says it's going to be a tremendous live service experience. It could be a horrible live service experience. We pretty much just don't know at this point. I would be curious to hear your thoughts on the whole hype of the next Battlefield game. Would you ever consider pre-ordering another Battlefield game? Are you just going to wait for the reviews? Let me know in the comments. And if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. And up next, check out this incredible game that was built by a handful of developers on a shoestring budget that goes above and beyond the multiplayer capacities of even the modern Battlefield games. It's a pretty cool watch. Check it out. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.